listening to Mia horror stories, and today's story is My Shadow Has Started Pointing at Things I Can't See. The screen will stay completely black, letting your imagination do all the work. No visuals, no noise, just a story that creeps under your skin. Don't skip a second, because every detail builds to the chilling end you won't want to miss. The first time it happened, I blamed the wind. I was halfway across the crosswalk at Bedford Avenue and North 7th. The little white walking man blinking like it was getting impatient with me when my shadow, long and narrow in the late afternoon, did something it wasn't supposed to do. The sun was behind me, warm on the back of my neck, and my shadow should have been a clean cutout. Head, shoulders, arms at my sides, the tote bag bumping my hip. Instead, it raised its right arm and pointed. Not a vague tilt, not the kind of illusion you can talk yourself into if you stare too long. A straight, intentional line, index finger, extended, aimed at the curb across the street, just to the right of a stack of green plastic milk crates outside a corner bodega. Like it was trying to get my attention. I stopped so hard a guy behind me said, "Yo," and had to stutter step around my heel. A seedy bike bell chirped. Bus exhaled at the stop, and the smell of diesel and hot rubber pushed in, cutting through the sweetness of someone's vanilla vape. I looked where the shadow pointed. Nothing, just a puddle drying in a dark patch, a crushed paper cup, a cigarette butt mashed into the gutter. Then the arm snapped back to my side like it had never moved. My shadow returned to being mine. The walking man flipped to the red hand, and the rest of the crosswalk filled with the soft rush of cars. "Everything okay?" a woman asked as she passed, her voice flat with New York politeness, the kind that means, "I'm not actually stopping." "Yeah," I said, because that's what you say when you don't want to become a story someone tells later. "Sorry," my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it right away. I crossed the rest of the street on red because the next wave of people did, and I followed them like a school of fish. On the far curb, I stepped out of the traffic flow and did the thing you do when your brain starts scanning for explanations. I tested. I shifted my weight. My shadow shifted. I lifted my arm. It lifted its arm, mirroring perfectly. I made a fist. It made a fist. I wagged a finger like I was scolding a child. It wagged a finger. Normal. A laugh tried to come out of me and turned into a breath. I told myself, trick of the light. Uneven pavement. Something in the corner of my eye that made my brain stitch movement where there wasn't any. That was plausible. That was survivable. But the image stuck. The clean line of that pointing arm. The feeling, not fear exactly, more like irritation that something had broken a rule without asking. My phone buzzed again. I finally pulled it out. "MARA, you're still coming tonight, right?" I stared at the text a second too long, thumb hovering. Tonight was her birthday dinner. Not a big party, just 8 of us at a place in Greenpoint she'd picked because the cocktails had tiny sprigs of herbs, and she liked saying, "It's on Franklin." Mara always said street names like she was introducing you to someone important. I typed back, "Yeah, running a little late from work, be there." I hit send, then shoved the phone away like the whole subject of time was contagious. My name is Eli Hart. I'm 34. I do user research for a health tech company, which means I ask strangers to tell me about their pain. And then I turn their answers into bullet points that managers can nod at. I live in Williamsburg, in a one-bedroom that smells faintly like old radiator heat and the downstairs neighbors cooking. It's fine. It's mine. And I've been trying quietly, privately, not to become the kind of person who cancels on plans because he'd rather sit alone and scroll until his eyes blur. Also, I have this thing where I notice patterns. It's useful at work. It's less useful at 3 a.m. I started walking again, moving with a careful looseness like I was trying not to startle my own body. My tote bag had my laptop and a book I hadn't opened in weeks. The book's spine dug into my side through the canvas. The street was loud in a way that wasn't aggressive, just constant. Car tires on imperfect asphalt, a skateboard's hollow clack as it hit a crack, snippets of conversations in English and Spanish, and something I didn't place, the wet hiss of an espresso machine when someone opened a cafe door. People spilled out of the L stop like the train was still inside them. I kept glancing down, not directly, just enough to catch my shadow in the lower edge of my vision. It behaved. It followed. At home, I did what I always do when my day feels slightly wrong. I tried to correct it with routine. Shoes off by the door, hand on the wall to steady myself as I bent to untie them, my left ankle still stiff, sometimes, from a bad sprain last year. Keys in the bowl, water in the kettle. I stood at the kitchen window, watching the alley behind the building where a guy sometimes practiced trumpet badly, and someone else sometimes screamed into a phone at midnight, and I let my eyes unfocus. The light in my apartment was thin and angled. Late afternoon in winter means the sun acts like it's leaving early on purpose. My shadow fell across the scuffed hardwood, stretching toward the bathroom door. It looked normal. The kettle clicked off. I poured the water, dropped in a tea bag, watched the string darken where it touched the surface. The smell of bergamot rose and settled into the room. My shoulders dropped a little. Then, because I couldn't help it, I tested again. I stepped closer to the window. The shadow sharpened. I raised my arm slowly. It raised its arm slowly. "Okay," I said out loud, just to fill the room with something that wasn't my own breathing. "Okay." A knock sounded from the hallway. Not loud, 2 quick taps, then a pause, then one more, like whoever it was didn't want to be annoying, but also didn't want to be ignored. I opened the door to find my neighbor leaning in the frame across from mine, holding a plastic grocery bag with something clinking inside. He was the kind of man who looked permanently apologetic for existing in shared spaces. Jonas Keller, 41, male, stood there in a navy hoodie and jeans that had a faint grease mark on the thigh. His hair was going gray at the temples, and he had the tired eyes of someone who wakes up early for work, even on weekends. "Hey," he said, lifting the bag slightly. "Sorry. This came for you. It was on my mat." He handed it over. Inside was a bottle of olive oil, one of the fancy ones I'd ordered after my last cheap bottle tasted like nothing. The label was in Italian, which always makes me feel like I'm pretending. "Thanks," I said. "I appreciate it." "No problem." Jonas's gaze flicked down, just a normal glance, not lingering toward the floor between us, where the hallway light cast both of our shadows into the apartment behind me. For a second, his eyebrows lifted, like he'd registered something, and then immediately corrected himself. "You good?" he asked, too quickly. "Yeah." My voice came out higher than I wanted. I tried again. "Yeah, just long day." Jonas nodded like that made sense, like he had a mental file labeled long day and he could slide me into it. He started to turn, then paused. "You going out?" he asked, looking past me at my coat on the hook. "Birthday dinner," I said. "A friend, Greenpoint." "Nice." I had a smile. It didn't fully arrive. "It's cold out. Watch the sidewalks. They're slick by the curb." "I will," I said, and I meant it. He left. His footsteps faded down the hallway with the soft shuffle of someone in socks. I closed my door and stood with my hand still on the knob, listening to the building settle, a distant toilet flush, the low hum of someone's TV through a wall, the radiator pinging as it warmed. I looked down again. My shadow lay across the floorboards, angled toward the kitchen. For a few heartbeats, it didn't move at all, even though I shifted my weight. Then it jerked just a little, like a delayed reaction catching up. My stomach tightened, not fear still, more like my body taking inventory and finding an item missing. I set the olive oil on the counter. I took my phone out, opened the camera, and aimed it at the floor like I was making a stupid art film. On the screen, the shadow was there, mine, normal. It did what I did. When I raised my arm, it raised its arm. I lowered the phone. With my eyes on the floor, the shadow seemed fractionally behind, like a video with the audio slightly out of sync. It didn't point. It didn't do anything dramatic. It just made me feel like my apartment had developed a small mechanical problem that might get worse if I ignored it. My phone buzzed again. "MARA, we're ordering apps." "Where are you?" I typed, leaving in 10. I stared at the message before I sent it. 10 minutes was optimistic. I still hadn't showered. My hair was doing that thing where it stuck up in the back like a question mark. But I didn't want to be the person who says, "Actually, I'm having a weird day and I don't feel like being in public," because that person, me, has used that line too many times. In the bathroom, the light was harsh and honest. I washed my face, watched the water run off my chin. My reflection looked normal. Tired, yes. Little red line on my nose from my glasses. A couple days of stubble. Nothing alarming. I dried my face and glanced down. The bathroom light threw my shadow onto the tile. It was sharp, small, pinned under me. It lifted its arm, slowly, pointed toward the bathtub. I froze, towel in my hands. The pointing finger aimed at the tub's edge, right where the shower curtain bunched. The curtain was cheap plastic with a pattern of blue lines that always looked like swimming pool tiles. My heart thudded once, hard, like it had been tapped. I didn't move because I didn't want to give it the satisfaction of being right, whatever it was. The shadow held the point. The house, my building, my life kept making its regular sounds around me. Radiator, distant footsteps, a faint siren outside that dopplered and softened. I swallowed. My throat felt tight, like I'd been talking too much. I could pull the curtain back, check the tub, prove it was nothing. Or I could grab my coat, leave the bathroom light on, and go meet my friends like a normal person, and let whatever this was become tomorrow's problem. I stood there, towel damp against my palms, and felt the choice settle in my chest like a coin that hadn't landed yet. I didn't pull the shower curtain. I turned off the bathroom light instead. The room went dim and forgiving, the way it does when you deny it information. The pointing stopped because the shadow vanished, and that felt like a solution even though it wasn't one. I got dressed fast. Jeans, sweater, coat. I left the olive oil on the counter like a bookmark. As I locked the door behind me, I told myself out loud again that I was late and being dramatic. and that whatever this was would still be here when I got back. The stairwell smelled like dust and old paint. My shadow flickered ahead of me on the steps as the motion sensor lights lagged, then snapped on. It behaved. I watched it like a bad driver watches their mirrors, hyper-aware, but pretending not to be. Outside, the cold cut through my sweater. The sky had that washed-out steel color that means snow later, maybe. I walked fast toward the subway, boots careful on the slick parts near the curb like Jonas had said. My ankle complained, a low ache that made me favor it. On the platform, my phone buzzed again. MARA, they're holding the table for 10 more. After that, we lose it. There it was. The clock. The thing I'm bad at. I typed back on my way, because that's also the thing I say when I'm not. The L train roared in, wind whipping my coat around my legs. I stepped in with everyone else, found a pole, wedged myself between a guy with headphones and a woman scrolling through photos of a dog. The doors closed. The car lurched. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The floor was gritty with salt. My shadow pooled under me, broken by shoes and bags, anonymous. It didn't point. I exhaled. Lorimer, someone shoved past me to get out. My foot slid a little. Pain flared bright in my ankle, sharp enough to make me gasp. I grabbed the pole harder than necessary. Sorry, the guy muttered, already gone. It wasn't bad, no pop, no collapse, but the ache deepened, and with it that old fear, the body failing at an inconvenient time. I shifted my weight carefully, trying to distribute it. The train stalled between stops. Not long. 30 seconds, maybe. Long enough for the lights to flicker. In that flicker, my shadow did it again. It pulled away from my feet and angled itself, arm lifting with a patience that made my stomach drop. The finger pointed not at the floor, but at the emergency intercom panel near the door. I stared. The lights steadied. The shadow snapped back into place, fractured again by the crowd. A woman across from me noticed my stare. She frowned, defensive. I looked away. This train is being held momentarily, the conductor's voice crackled. We'll be moving shortly. I swallowed. My phone felt heavy in my hand. I didn't want to be the person who hits the intercom because of a feeling. I didn't want to be late because of a feeling. I didn't want to be wrong. The train moved. The doors opened at Bedford. I limped off with everyone else, adrenaline making my ankle feel worse than it probably was. Upstairs, the night had settled in earnest. Streetlights cast long, sharp shadows that overlapped and broke and reformed with every passing car. I walked toward Franklin Avenue, slower now. Each step sent a small pulse up my leg. My phone buzzed again. MARA, we might have to reorder. Are you close? I'm close, I muttered to no one. I checked the map anyway, like it might change. As I passed a row of parked cars, my shadow stretched along their sides, warped and multiplied. It looked like a crowd following me. I kept my eyes forward. At the corner of Franklin and Kent, I almost didn't see him. A man was crouched by a bike rack, fumbling with a U-lock. His hood was up, but I recognized the navy hoodie anyway. Jonas, I said, surprised into stopping. He looked up, startled. His face was pale, eyes bright in the streetlight. Oh, hey, he said. He stood too quickly, then steadied himself with a hand on the rack. Sorry, didn't hear you. You okay? I asked, because apparently that's my line now. Yeah. He gestured vaguely at the bike. Lock jammed, of course. His shadow lay long behind him, pointing down the street. Mine lay beside it. You heading out? He asked. Dinner, I said. You? Work thing, he said, then corrected himself. Actually, no. I was heading back, forgot my keys again. He laughed, but it didn't land. I shifted my weight. Pain spiked. I hissed before I could stop myself. Ankle, Jonas asked, immediately attentive. Old injury, I said. Just twinged it. He nodded like he understood more than that. He bent again, tugged at the lock. It didn't budge. You want help? I asked. He hesitated. Maybe just hold it steady. I stepped closer, braced the bike with my good leg. Our shadows overlapped on the sidewalk, merged into a shape that wasn't either of us. For a second, just a second, it looked like the combined shadow angled away, pointing down Franklin, toward the darker stretch where the street dipped under the overpass. I sucked in a breath. Jonas yanked harder. The lock gave with a metallic snap that made us both flinch. There, he said, relief flooding his voice. Thanks. No problem, I said, heart still racing. He swung a leg over the bike, then paused. You sure you're okay to walk? I'm fine, I said automatically. Then, because lying felt worse, I'll make it. Listen, he said, lowering his voice. This is going to sound weird. I waited. I thought I saw something earlier in the hallway. He trailed off, shook his head. Never mind. Long day. My phone buzzed again, insistent. Mara, they're giving our table away in 2. I have to go, I said, sharper than I meant to. Sorry, Jonas nodded, but his gaze flicked down again to the pavement between us. His jaw tightened. Eli, he said, if you notice anything else off, just don't ignore it, okay? I won't, I said, even as the words felt like a promise I couldn't keep. He rode off, tires whispering over the wet asphalt. I stood there alone, shadows stretching and shifting around me. My ankle throbbed. My phone buzzed again, then again, the screen lighting my face. I started toward the restaurant, then stopped. My shadow had pulled ahead of me, elongated by a passing car's headlights. It pointed, clearly this time, toward the underpass, where the streetlights were dimmer, and the sound changed, echoing and hollow. I looked at my phone. 2 missed calls now. The time glared back at me. I could keep going, make the dinner, apologize, ice my ankle later. Or I could follow the pointing, just far enough to prove once and for all that it was nothing, before whatever this was decided for me. A siren wailed somewhere to the east. Snowflakes started to fall, sparse and tentative, melting as soon as they hit the ground. I took a step toward the underpass. Pain flared. My phone rang again. I let it ring as I made the choice. I turned down Franklin instead of toward the restaurant. The sound changed immediately. Cars above the overpass made a low, rolling thunder, like weather passing through concrete. The street dipped and narrowed, the buildings pulling back just enough to make the light feel thinner. Sodium lamps buzzed overhead. A puddle reflected the underside of the bridge in broken orange pieces. My phone buzzed again. I silenced it without looking. Each step sent a sharp reminder up my ankle, the joint stiffening, as if it resented being asked to do anything extra tonight. Just a look, I said quietly. Then I'm done. My shadow stayed ahead of me, stretched and distorted by the angle of the lights. It didn't point now. It just waited. Under the overpass, the sidewalk sloped unevenly. Graffiti layered over older graffiti, names and symbols half erased. The smell was damp concrete and old trash. Somewhere water dripped in a steady rhythm. I scanned the area, trying to see what the shadow had seen. There were the usual things: a shopping cart tipped on its side, a broken pallet, a pile of black garbage bags stacked neatly like they were waiting for instructions. No movement, no person, No obvious hazard. My heart rate slowed a notch. Embarrassment crept in, warm and itchy. Great, I muttered. You followed a vibe. I took my phone out and turned on the flashlight, sweeping it across the ground. The beam caught a flash of white near the curb. For a second, my brain leapt bone, teeth, something wrong. It was a sneaker, just a sneaker. One of those foam slides, scuffed and abandoned. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. The flashlight beam shook a little in my hand. Attempt 1, I thought. Done. Solved. Nothing here. I turned to leave, and my shadow pointed again. This time it wasn't dramatic. Just a subtle angle, the arm lifting partway, finger aimed toward a darker pocket behind the stacked garbage bags, where the light didn't quite reach. My mouth went dry. Okay, I said louder now, like volume might make this rational. Okay. I limped closer, flashlight beam jittering over the bags. They were tied tight, black plastic shiny with moisture. The smell was stronger here, sour and sweet at the same time. Behind them was a recessed doorway I hadn't noticed before. A service entrance, maybe, half hidden by the bridge support. The metal door was shut, paint flaking, a red and white sign bolted to it. No admittance. Authorized personnel only. Mine was crooked, one screw missing. The shadow's finger aimed straight at the door handle. Absolutely not, I said. I took a step back. My ankle buckled slightly, pain flaring hot enough to make my eyes water. I grabbed the bridge column to steady myself, palms scraping against rough concrete, breathing hard now. Cold air burning my lungs. This was the line. I could feel it. A locked door under an overpass is not a mystery. It's a liability. This was my brain trying to turn stress into narrative. I turned away from the door, from the pointing shadow, and started back toward the streetlight glow. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen before I could stop myself. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I pictured a robocall, a scam, but my thumb slid anyway. Hello, Eli, a man's voice, uncertain, familiar, Jonas. Yeah, sorry. I found your number in the building group chat. I didn't know if are you okay. I looked back at the door. The shadow still pointed. I'm fine, I said, lying again. Why? He hesitated, breath audible. I'm at the bike rack by Kent. I thought I saw you head this way, toward the underpass. I did, I said. I'm just checking something. Eli, he said, and now his voice was firmer. That area's restricted. There was a gas line issue here last year. They closed that service door because what? I waited. Because someone got hurt, he finished. They never fixed the latch properly. And always, the phone crackled. A car passed overhead, drowning him out. Jonas, I said. It doesn't always what? Lock, he said. It doesn't always lock. My heart thudded. I'm coming, he added quickly. Don't touch anything, just stay where you are. I'm not a child, I snapped, then immediately regretted it. I mean, I'm not touching it. Good, he said. I'm 2 minutes away. I hung up and shoved the phone into my pocket. My hands were shaking now, fine tremors I couldn't control. I tried to slow my breathing. Attempt 2, I thought. Call for backup. Wait it out. The waiting made everything louder. The drip of water, the hum of traffic, my own pulse in my ears. Something moved behind the door, not a shape, a sound, a dull thud, followed by a faint metallic rattle. I froze. The flashlight beam wavered. Hello, I called, hating how thin my voice sounded. Another sound. This one clearer. Like someone dragging something heavy across a floor. My mind filled in images before I could stop it. A trapped person, injured, trying to get help. A generator failing. A collapse, a body. The shadow's finger didn't move. I stepped closer despite myself, heart hammering. The door handle was inches from my hand. It was scratched, paint worn down to metal where fingers had grabbed it too often. "Hey," I said again. "Is someone in there?" Silence. Then a loud clang made me jump back, ankle screaming. I cried out, catching myself on the wall, breath knocked out of me. The door shuddered once, then went still. I pressed my back against the concrete, chest heaving. My ankle throbbed in waves now, sharp and deep. Sweat prickled along my hairline despite the cold. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." I waited. 30 seconds. A minute. Nothing. The sound, when it came again, was unmistakable. A rat. It squeezed through a gap near the bottom of the door, fur slick and dark, eyes catching the flashlight beam. It paused, whiskers twitching, then darted past my foot and disappeared into the shadows. I sagged with relief so strong it made me dizzy. A laugh bubbled up, half hysterical. "That's it," I said aloud. "That's what you're doing to me." The misdirection deflated something in my chest. I felt stupid, human again. I pushed off the wall and turned away from the door for good. That's when I noticed the smell. It wasn't garbage. It wasn't damp concrete. It was gas. Faint, but unmistakable. That rotten egg edge that doesn't belong anywhere except warnings and emergency drills. I froze mid-step. My shadow, stretched long by a passing car, lifted its arm one last time and pointed, not at the door now, but at the small metal valve mounted on the wall beside it. The valve that was turned just a few degrees off center. Behind me, footsteps pounded on concrete. "Eli," Jonas shouted. And above us, somewhere in the structure of the bridge, something sparked. The streetlights flickered. The darkness surged closer. There was no going back the way I'd come. Not fast enough. The spark didn't become an explosion. It became a soft, terrifying whoop, a brief bloom of orange light under the bridge, like someone had cupped a flame in their hands and then crushed it out. Heat washed my face. The smell of burning dust and hair snapped through the gas stink. "Down," Jonas yelled. I dropped without thinking, bad ankle screaming as it folded under me. My palms slapped the wet concrete. Something stung my cheek. The streetlight above us died with a pop, plunging the underpass into a dim, sodium afterglow from farther down the block. Silence followed. Not the cinematic kind, just the sudden absence of traffic noise, as if the bridge had held its breath. I lay there, heart battering my ribs, counting without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. "Eli," Jonas said, closer now. "Talk to me." "I'm here," I said. My voice sounded wrong in my ears. "I'm here." He crouched beside me, one knee down. His hoodie smelled faintly singed. He ran his hands over my shoulders, my arms, quick and practiced, checking. "My face?" I asked. "Red," he said. "Not bad, you?" My ankles shot. "Yeah," he said. "I saw." I pushed myself up to a seated position, leaning back against the bridge column. The world swam for a second and then steadied. The gas smell was still there, lighter now, like it had been stirred. The valve. I looked where the shadow had pointed last, toward the small metal knob on the wall beside the service door. In the dim light, I could see the notch on its face, still angled wrong. "We have to shut it," I said. Jonas shook his head. "We have to get out." "And then what?" I snapped, sharper than I meant to. "Wait for it to light again." He opened his mouth, closed it. The traffic noise began to seep back in above us, tentative, like the city testing whether it was allowed to keep going. "You call 911, I said. "Tell them gas leak under Franklin." "You'll what?" he said. "You can't stand." I tried anyway. Pain flared white and hot. I bit back a sound and slumped. "I can crawl," I said, which was stupid, and we both knew it. Jonas looked at the valve, then at the service door. He swore under his breath. "The latch," he said. "If the line's pressurized wrong, closing it too fast could spark," I finished, remembering the intercom, the warnings, the way my job trained me to complete other people's sentences with worst-case scenarios. He pulled his phone out, thumb already moving. "I'm calling it in." "No," I said, and then softer, "Wait." The gas smell surged again, stronger this time. Somewhere metal creaked, expanding with heat or cold or pressure, I couldn't tell. The shadow at my feet stretched as headlights passed, snapping and reforming. In the jittery light, it angled toward the valve again. Not dramatic, insistent. "I know," Jonas said, mistaking my look. "I know it feels, Jonas," I said. "Listen to me." The spark came from above, right? A loose wire, not the valve. He hesitated. "If we shut it slowly," I said, "and ground ourselves, touch the wall, keep contact." "You don't know that," he said. "I know the alternative," I said, and my voice broke. "Please." For a long second, all I could hear was my own breathing and the drip of water somewhere deeper under the bridge. Then Jonas nodded once. "Okay," he said. "Okay, I'll do it. You stay back." "I'm staying right here," I said, pressing my palm flat against the concrete. It was cold, gritty, real. He shrugged out of his hoodie, revealing a thin t-shirt underneath, and wrapped the hoodie around his hand. He approached the valve slowly, one hand braced on the wall, the other hovering. 911's already dialed, he said. "If this goes bad," I hit send. "Slow," I said, "slow." He closed his eyes for half a second, then put his wrapped hand on the valve and began to turn it, a millimeter at a time. The metal squealed softly, a sound that made my teeth ache. The gas smell lessened. My chest loosened a fraction. Halfway, a car passed overhead, its headlights flaring. The shadow leapt. Jonas froze, hand still on the valve. "Don't stop," I said. "That's worse." He swallowed and kept turning. There was another spark above us, smaller this time, more of a spit. Jonas flinched, but didn't let go. The valve turned home with a dull thunk. The smell faded, retreating like a tide. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then my phone vibrated violently in my pocket, the screen lighting the underside of the bridge with a frantic blue. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Jonas stepped back, sagging against the wall. He slid down until he was sitting beside me, knees pulled up, breathing hard. "Jesus," he said, "Jesus." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, overlapping fire, then police. The city had decided we were a problem worth paying attention to. "You should have left," Jonas said, staring at the valve like it might move again. "You should have gone to your dinner." I thought of Mara's calls, the apps arriving cold, the way I'd silenced my phone like I could mute consequences. "I don't think I could have," I said. The firefighters arrived first, moving fast and loud, radios crackling, boots slapping concrete. They took over with the efficiency of people who train for this exact shape of chaos. Someone checked the valve. Someone else waved a detector wand that beeped angrily, then softened. A paramedic knelt in front of me, asking my name, my age, where it hurt. She pressed fingers into my ankle, and I yelped despite myself. "Probably a fracture," she said, not unkindly. "We'll splint it." They wrapped my ankle tight, the pressure a relief. When they lifted me onto the stretcher, the world tilted, and I caught sight of my shadow on the underside of the bridge, short now, broken by straps and hands. It didn't point. It just lay there attached. As they rolled me toward the ambulance, I saw Jonas arguing quietly with a police officer, gesturing toward the valve, the door, the bridge. He looked small under the lights, shoulders hunched. In the ambulance, the doors closed and the noise softened. The medic checked my vitals. My phone buzzed again, and this time I looked. "Mara, are you okay?" I heard sirens. I typed back with shaking fingers, "I'm alive, I'm sorry." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. The ambulance lurched into motion. Outside, the city resumed its rhythm, altered just enough to remind me that it could break rules without asking. I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, my shadow on the ambulance wall shifted as the vehicle turned. For a split second, just long enough to make my stomach drop, it seemed to lag behind. Then it caught up. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and burned coffee. It was quiet in the way places get after midnight, when the drama has either resolved or moved somewhere else. My ankle was wrapped in layers of gauze and a temporary splint that made it feel bigger than it was, like a poorly packed suitcase. Every so often it throbbed, a dull reminder that I'd made choices with consequences. Resident came by with a tablet and a tired smile and said hairline fracture lucky, and then said no weight bearing for a few weeks, and then said, "Do you have someone who can take you home?" I said yes, because Jonas was sitting in the plastic chair by the wall, hoodie back on now, hands folded between his knees like he was waiting to be called into a principal's office. He stood when the resident left. "They're done with statements," he said. "Fire department, police." The gas company guy was not happy. I nodded, the valve, the report. The neat boxes my job taught me people like to check after something almost goes wrong. "Did they?" I stopped, tried again. "Did they say how it happened?" Jonas shrugged. "Officially, pending investigation. Unofficially," he rubbed his face. "That service door gets used by contractors. Someone probably left the valve cracked. Add one loose wire," and he made a small exploding gesture with his fingers, then seemed to regret it. "Someone will get fined," I said. "Someone always does," he said. Mara arrived 10 minutes later, coat half-buttoned, hair pulled back like she'd done it in a hurry. She smelled like rosemary and citrus, restaurant air clinging to her. "You're an idiot," she said, and then she hugged me carefully, arms awkward around the splint. Her voice shook. "Don't do that again." "I didn't plan to," I said. She pulled back and looked at my face, tilting it toward the light. "You're singed." "Adds character," Jonas said, trying for levity. Mara eyed him, then softened. "Thank you," she said, "for staying with him." Jonas nodded. He didn't say of course, which I appreciated. The discharge process took forever. Paperwork. A prescription for pain I knew I wouldn't finish. A sheet of exercises I wouldn't start right away. When they wheeled me out, the night had gone soft and misty. Snow dusted the curb in patches, already gray with city. The underpass was taped off when we passed it on the slow route home, flashing lights painting the concrete in alternating colors. I didn't look down. I didn't need to. At my apartment, Jonas helped me up the stairs one slow step at a time. My ankle protested, but it held. He set me on the couch and brought me water, set my phone on the table within reach. "I'll check on you tomorrow," he said, hovering near the door. "If that's okay." "Please," I said. When he left, the apartment felt bigger than it had that morning. Quieter. I lay back and stared at the ceiling fan, off, dust visible on the blades in the lamplight. My shadow fell faintly on the wall, rounded and indistinct. I slept in short, strange bursts. In the morning, my phone was full of messages. Mara's apology for snapping. My manager's careful, take the time you need. A number I didn't recognize that turned out to be a city investigator asking me to confirm times and locations. Answered what I could. I didn't mention the shadow. There was no box for that. The days that followed settled into a rhythm I didn't choose, but learned anyway. Ice packs, elevating my ankle on pillows, remote work that blurred together. Jonas stopped by with groceries and news clippings about the underpass, shaking his head at the language. Potential hazard mitigated, no injuries reported. I let that go. Once, on a video call, my camera froze and my image lagged behind my voice by half a second. I laughed it off, but my hands were cold for an hour afterward. Physical therapy started the next week. The room smelled like rubber mats and disinfectant. The therapist, a woman with a no-nonsense ponytail, pressed on my ankle and said, "Tell me when it hurts." I did. She nodded like pain was a language she spoke fluently. "Your brain will try to protect you," she said, as if reading my mind. "You'll hesitate. That's normal. We'll work through it." Outside, winter did what it always does, wore everything down to essentials. The city moved on. The tape came down. The underpass reopened with a new lock on the service door and a brighter light installed overhead. Someone had painted over the graffiti, leaving a blank patch that felt louder than the tags had. The first time I walked past it again, cane tapping the sidewalk, I didn't stop. I kept my eyes on the far curb, the rhythm of my steps. My shadow followed, obedient. Mostly. At home, life returned to its small, manageable problems. The radiator hissed. The olive oil went rancid before I remembered to use it. Mara and I rescheduled dinner and laughed about the cold apps. I told her the story in pieces, leaving out the parts that didn't fit. One evening, weeks later, I stood at the kitchen counter chopping onions. The light was wrong, late, angled, familiar. My shadow stretched across the floor toward the hallway. I lifted my arm. It lifted its arm. I turned the knife flat and slid it into the drawer. I washed my hands and dried them carefully, watching the movements mirror me. When I turned off the light and the shadow disappeared, relief came like a quiet exhale. I don't think it was ever supernatural. I tell myself that, and it helps. Stress does things. Injury does things. Your brain stitches warnings together from fragments and throws them ahead of you like flares. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes they're early. I walk slower now. I pay attention to infrastructure, to the smell of gas, to the sound of electricity where it shouldn't be. I answer my phone. Every so often, though, when the light flickers just so, when I'm tired and the city hums and my ankle aches with weather, I get the sense of being a half beat behind myself, of something already knowing where to look. When that happens, I stop. I look, and I decide what to do next. That's it for this nightmare. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on notifications. It really helps keep the stories alive. And don't stop here. Dive into another one of our videos and keep the fear going. Hey friends, it's your girl Mia. This is Mia Horror Stories. And tonight's story, my therapist told me the voices aren't in my head. They're behind me, is told in darkness. The screen will stay black, so you can simply listen, imagine, and feel every moment without distraction. Trust me, the build-up matters, and the ending is where the real chill hides. So don't look away, and don't leave early. The first time it happened, in Dr. Keller's office, I tried to make it polite. I was mid-sentence, something about how the new job was fine, which is what you say when you don't want to talk about the part where you sit in your car after work and stare at your hands until they stop shaking. And I heard it again. A voice, close, not loud, not inside my skull the way anxiety narrates you. It was placed like it had a direction. You don't have to tell her that part. It was Dr. Keller. Her mouth was closed. She was still in that attentive posture, chin slightly angled, pen resting on the notepad as if it weighed nothing. Eyes steady, but not hard. I blinked and kept my face the same. My heartbeat did that stupid thing where it tries to climb out through your throat. I said, "Sorry, can you repeat the question?" Dr. Keller's eyebrows pinched together for a second. I didn't ask anything. The air in her office had that low clean smell of eucalyptus and whatever detergent the building used on carpets. There was a diffuser on a shelf making a tiny electric hum that you only noticed when you listened for it. Somewhere outside, on York Avenue, an ambulance went by with its siren turned down to that bored city wail. "Right," I said. I tried to smile like I had a normal reason to pause. I thought I heard. You heard a voice. Dr. Keller didn't say it like a verdict. She said it the way you name the weather. I stared at the corner of her desk, where a coaster left a faint ring. My hands were clasped in my lap, tight enough my fingernails bit into my palms. "There's this thing," I said. "Sometimes I think people are talking, like not people, just a voice. And it feels like it's coming from where?" Her tone stayed even, but her pen had stopped moving. That was new. I swallowed behind me. That was the part I hadn't said out loud before. I'd been careful with that detail, even with myself. It sounded theatrical. It sounded like a movie. But the sensation was stubbornly physical, like a presence you could point to, like heat from an open oven. Dr. Keller held my gaze for a moment, then glanced not at me, but past me. The chair I sat in was angled toward her, a soft gray thing that looked expensive and forgiving. Behind it was a short bookcase with tidy rows of paperbacks, a framed photo of Dr. Keller in hiking boots, and a tall plant whose leaves had dusty edges. Dr. Keller's eyes traveled over those objects as if they were evidence. Then she said quietly, "Don't turn around yet." My stomach did something small and ugly. "Why?" "Because I want to understand what you're describing," she said. "And I don't want you to reinforce it by checking. Just stay with the sensation. Tell me what you notice." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "It's closer right now, like someone leaning in." The voice came again, soft as a secret, right at the back of my left ear. "She's making you do it." I flinched. It was involuntary, a quick jerk of my shoulder. Dr. Keller saw it. "Was that it?" she asked. I nodded once, fast. "Okay," she said. "You're doing really well." That phrase made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. I was 31 and sitting in an office overlooking a deli and a nail salon, trying not to look behind my own chair like a child afraid of a closet. Dr. Keller shifted in her seat. The leather gave a faint squeak. She set her pen down with care, as if noise mattered. "Can you tell me," she said, "when you first noticed it as behind you, specifically?" The question was simple. My brain tried to make it not. I thought of the subway platform, the way you feel someone's breath too close, and you move forward without thinking. I thought of the hallway in my building, the old radiator ticking, and the smell of fried onions drifting under doors. I thought of my own apartment, the way the pipes sighed at night, and how I'd started sleeping with the kitchen light on because the dark wasn't just dark anymore, it had corners. "It got worse after October," I said, "after my mom called." "About your father," Dr. Keller prompted. I nodded, my private flaw sitting between us like a third person, avoidance. The way I could look straight at a problem and decide it wasn't real if I didn't name it. I'd done that my whole life. I'd done it with my dad's drinking. I'd done it with my own panic attacks. I'd done it with the way I'd started taking the long way home because the shorter route felt watched. The voice behind me breathed something that might have been a laugh, or might have been the diffuser humming, or might have been the plant leaves brushing the wall in the air vent. "Don't say his name." Dr. Keller's gaze flicked again, past my shoulder. Not a dramatic glance, just a quick, assessing movement. She was too controlled for drama. "What are you afraid will happen?" she asked. "If you turn around right now." My mouth went dry. "I'll see something," I said, and immediately hated how it sounded. "Or I won't, and that'll be worse." "Worse how?" "Because then it means I stopped." The word was sitting right there, broken, crazy, not safe to be alone in my own head. I'd been circling it for months like it was a pothole I could drive around forever. Dr. Keller leaned forward slightly. "It would mean you can't trust your perception." I nodded. My eyes stung, not from tears exactly, but from the effort of holding everything in place. Outside, someone honked, long and impatient. The city kept doing what it did, indifferent to whatever was happening inside this calm, warm room. Dr. Keller took a breath and said something that, even now, I can replay with perfect clarity. "I don't think the voices are only in your head," she said. My body went very still. Even my hands stopped squeezing. She held up one finger, not a warning, more like a pause sign. "Let me finish." Her voice stayed clinical, but there was a small change in it, a firmness I hadn't heard before. "I'm not saying there's something paranormal," she said, and I almost laughed at the specificity. "I'm saying there are a few explanations that aren't about you being crazy. Some are medical, some are environmental, some involve other people." "Other people?" Behind me, the voice whispered, sharper now. "She knows." Dr. Keller's eyes went past me again, longer this time. Her jaw tightened in a way that suggested she was making a decision too. "Have you ever had your hearing checked?" she asked. "Not just a basic screening, a full audiology exam." "No," I said, confused. "Why?" "There are conditions that can make spatial perception of sound unreliable," she said carefully. "Also, certain frequencies can cause sensations of pressure, unease, the feeling of presence. Older buildings can have strange acoustics, HVAC systems, even nearby construction." I wanted to grab onto that. Old buildings, HVAC, construction, explanations with invoices and maintenance requests. But my private fear kept tapping at the edge of my mind. What if it wasn't any of that? What if it followed me because it was me? Dr. Keller continued. And then there's the possibility that someone is doing something intentionally or unintentionally that you're picking up on. Devices, apps, neighbors. It sounds far-fetched, but it's not impossible. My throat tightened. Are you saying someone is messing with me? I'm saying we shouldn't assume it's only internal, she replied. Especially because you're describing it as consistently behind you. That specificity matters. The office felt different suddenly, like the temperature had shifted a degree. I realized I'd been listening so hard to the space behind me that I hadn't really looked at Dr. Keller's face. She looked concerned, not therapist concerned, something more human. She reached toward her desk drawer, opened it, and slid something out. A small device, black, palm-sized. She held it low so I could see it without leaning back. A white noise recorder, she said. I sometimes use it for clients with sensory sensitivities. It logs ambient sound patterns. My pulse stumbled. You record sessions? No, she said quickly. Not speech. It doesn't pick up conversation clearly. It measures spikes, frequencies. It's like a thermometer for sound. Behind me, the voice muttered, annoyed. Don't let her. Dr. Keller set the device on the side table between our chairs, closer to her than to me, as if respecting my space. Then she looked me in the eye. I'm going to ask you to do something uncomfortable, she said. We have two options. I forced myself to breathe through my nose. The eucalyptus smell felt too sharp. Option 1, she said. You turn your chair slightly, and we see if the sensation changes. We do it slowly together. No sudden movement. My fingers dug into my palms. Option 2, she said. We stop here. You leave, and before our next session, you get a hearing exam and a basic safety check at home, locks, smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detector. I can give you a list and we can talk through it. Carbon monoxide. The idea landed with a thud. I pictured headlines, the kind you skim past and later can't stop thinking about. Dr. Keller waited. She didn't rush me. Outside, a delivery truck idled, the engine vibrating through the window like a distant purr. Behind me, the voice softened again, almost coaxing. Get up, go, don't turn. I stared at my therapist, at the calm set of her shoulders, at the device on the table, at the plant, leaves barely moving in the vent's breath. My choice sat in the room like a weight. Stay and test the behind me feeling here. In the safest place, I had right now, or leave, and start pulling at the practical threads that might unravel something bigger. I swallowed, feeling the dryness scrape. If we do option 1, I said, and I panic. Then we stop, Dr. Keller said, and we ground, and you'll still go do option 2. My hands loosened just a little. I felt the chair beneath me, the fabric against my back. I listened to the hum, the distant traffic, the soft tick of the radiator, and behind me, whatever that was waited. I nodded once, because I didn't trust my voice. Dr. Keller lifted her hand slightly, as if to guide the pace, and said, "Okay." On 3, we turned just a few degrees. We didn't get to 3. The hum in the room changed first. Not louder, sharper, like someone tightening a screw you didn't know was loose. Dr. Keller's hand was still raised between us when the small black device on the side table chirped once. A clean, synthetic sound. Then again, faster. She froze. I froze harder. "That's new," she said, and the calm in her voice thinned just enough for me to hear the effort underneath it. Behind me, the voice breathed, irritated now. Too close. Dr. Keller reached for the device, then stopped herself, as if remembering a rule. "Maya," she said, "I want you to stay facing me. Don't turn. Just tell me what you're feeling." My skin prickled along my arms, the way it does when you stand too near a subway train. "Pressure," I said, like something's pushing on my ears. The device chirped again. A rapid staccato, then a low vibration I could feel through the table, through the floor. Dr. Keller's eyes flicked to the ceiling vent, then to the wall behind me, then to the window. "Okay," she said, "we're going to pause the turning. New plan." "What's happening?" My voice cracked on the last word. I hated that it did. "I'm not sure yet," she said honestly. "But that device is picking up a sustained spike, not speech frequency. It could be mechanical, construction equipment maybe. Or," she stopped herself. "Or what?" She met my eyes. "Or something closer." The word closer landed in my chest and sat there. The voice behind me whispered, almost smug now, "Told you." Dr. Keller stood, slow and deliberate. Her chair squeaked softly. She moved to the wall behind her desk and pressed a button. Nothing happened. "Building management usually responds within minutes," she said, more to herself than to me. She pressed again. Still nothing. The device vibrated harder, like a phone on a table in silent mode. "I'm going to ask you a difficult question," she said, "and I need you to answer as accurately as you can, not as reassuringly as you want to." I nodded, because nodding was easier than speaking. "Has anyone else had access to your apartment recently?" she asked. "Landlord, super, a neighbor, anyone who could install a device, even temporarily." My first instinct was to say no. Clean, simple, avoidant. Then my private flaw kicked me in the teeth. "The super," I said, "last month. There was a leak from the unit above mine. He came in twice, once when I wasn't home." Dr. Keller's jaw tightened. "Did you notice anything out of place afterward?" I thought of the faint scuff on the baseboard near the radiator. The way I'd told myself it was always there. "I didn't look," I said quietly. The device chirped again, louder this time. Dr. Keller picked it up despite herself, thumb hovering over the screen. "I'm going to break protocol," she said. "Just a little." "What does it say?" I asked. Her eyes scanned the display. "It's not random," she said. "The frequency is modulating, cycling. That suggests a source that's adjusting." My stomach dropped. "Adjusting to what?" "To us," she said. Behind me, the voice laughed. Not a sound exactly, more like breath scraping teeth. "Enough," Dr. Keller said, sharp now. She turned toward the window, pulled the blind up halfway. Late afternoon light spilled in, flat and gray. The city looked normal. Pedestrians, a dog tugging at a leash, a delivery bike weaving through traffic. Normal things. I clung to them. Dr. Keller glanced at her watch. "We have 10 minutes left in the session," she said. "I don't want you leaving here without a plan." The device vibrated again, harder. "I think we should leave," I said. The words came out rushed, overlapping each other. "Right now. This building, whatever it is, it's making it worse." Dr. Keller hesitated. "If it's environmental, moving you abruptly could intensify the sensation. And if it's not," I shot back, "if it's someone, a beat too, then leaving could also be risky," she said. "Elevators, stairwells, isolated spaces." My chest tightened. The office suddenly felt too small, the walls inching closer. The voice murmured, coaxing again. "She doesn't want you to know." Dr. Keller looked at me, really looked. "Maya," she said, "I need to ask you something that might sound accusatory, and it's not meant that way." I laughed, brittle. "Everything sounds accusatory right now." "When the voice speaks," she said, "does it ever say things you couldn't already know?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. Thought of my father's name sitting unspoken. Thought of the scuff mark. Thought of the routes I avoided. "No," I said finally. "It mostly tells me what I'm already afraid of." She nodded slowly. "That matters." The device chirped again, then went silent. The sudden quiet was worse. My ears rang with it. Dr. Keller exhaled. "Okay," she said. "Here's the time-sensitive part." I swallowed. "Go on." "If this is a device," she said, "it's active right now. It could be recording, transmitting, or simply emitting. Either way, the longer it runs, the more data it gathers, or the more it affects you. So we call the police," I said. "Right." Her expression tightened. "If we call without evidence, they may do a cursory check and leave. If the source is subtle, it could be missed. Worse, whoever's responsible might remove it afterward." My avoidance flared. I wanted someone else to handle it. A uniform, a clipboard, anything but me. "What are you suggesting?" I asked. Dr. Keller took a breath. "I suggest we gather something concrete before involving them. Enough to justify a deeper search." "How?" My voice was thin. She held up the device. "This logs data, but I need to compare it to another environment. If the readings drop when you change locations, that tells us something." "You want me to leave?" I said. "With me," she said quickly. "Just outside the office. Hallway first, then maybe the stairwell. We monitor the device the whole time." My heart hammered. Hallways, stairwells. The places I already avoided in my own building. Behind me, the voice sharpened. "Bad idea." "I don't like this," I said. "I know," Dr. Keller replied. "And you can say no. But if you do, our next option is to end the session, and you go home alone with this still happening." That did it. The image of my apartment, dim, familiar, full of corners, made my skin crawl. "Okay," I said, before I could talk myself out of it. "Okay, we try the hallway." Dr. Keller nodded, relief flickering across her face. She grabbed her coat, slipped her phone into her pocket. We do this slowly, she said. You stay in front of me. If you feel overwhelmed, you say stop. I stood. The room tilted slightly, then settled. The device vibrated faintly in her hand. As we moved toward the door, the voice behind me hissed, panicked now. Don't. Dr. Keller opened the door. The hallway light flickered, once, twice, then steadied. The carpet smelled faintly of cleaner and old dust. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed. Footsteps echoed, then faded. We stepped out. The device chirped immediately, louder than before. Dr. Keller's eyes widened. That's significant, she said. What does it mean? I asked. It means the source might not be in the office, she said. It might be following us. My stomach dropped. Following how? She didn't answer right away. She glanced down the hall, then back at the office door, then at the stairwell sign glowing green at the end of the corridor. We need to isolate variables, she said. Stairwell next. It's shielded, concrete, fewer signals. The elevator dinged somewhere nearby, unseen. The sound made me jump. I really don't like this, I said again, quieter this time. Dr. Keller met my gaze. Neither do I, she said. But if I'm right, we don't have much time before whoever, or whatever system, is causing this realizes we're testing it. Behind me, the voice went very still. We started down the hall toward the stairwell, the device vibrating harder with every step. And I had the sudden, sickening certainty that whatever was behind me didn't need me to turn around to stay close. The stairwell door swung shut behind us with a hollow thump that echoed longer than it should have. Concrete walls, painted institutional beige, a metal handrail cold under my palm. The air smelled like dust and old water. Above us, a fluorescent light flickered not ominously, just badly maintained and buzzed with a thin mosquito whine. Dr. Keller held the device between us like a compass. It vibrated, then chirped. Still high, she said, but different. My ears rang. A high-pitched shimmer layered over everything else. My jaw ached from clenching. Behind me, the voice was quieter here, but closer, as if it had leaned in to whisper directly against the back of my neck. Wrong way. We stood on the 5th floor landing. Above us, 4 more flights to the roof. Below, 5 flights to the lobby. The stairwell curled in tight, square turns, each landing identical except for the faded numbers stenciled on the wall. Dr. Keller frowned at the screen. The signal's attenuated, she said. Concrete's blocking something. That's good. So it's not me, I said. I needed to hear it out loud. It suggests an external source, she replied carefully. Or at least an interaction between you and something external. Not the same thing, my brain supplied helpfully. The device chirped again. Lower now, slower. Okay, she said. First attempt, vertical separation. She nodded upward. We go up 1 floor, see if the reading changes. My legs already felt rubbery, like I'd run stairs too fast. And if it gets worse, then we go down, she said. We don't linger. We climbed. Each step scraped sound out of the stairwell. My breath got loud in my ears. Halfway up, the voice surged suddenly, sharp and urgent. Stop. I stumbled, catching myself on the rail. Pain flared in my wrist. Dr. Keller grabbed my elbow. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied. My pulse skidded. I thought I heard. A door slammed somewhere above us. Hard. The bang ricocheted through the stairwell like a gunshot. I yelped, heart punching my ribs. Dr. Keller flinched too, then exhaled. "Someone exiting on 7, she said. "Sound travels." The device chirped, but didn't spike. Misdirection, my brain labeled it, shaky and relieved. We reached the 6th-floor landing. Dr. Keller held the device out, rotating slowly. The vibration softened, almost nothing. She looked up, eyes bright despite the tension. "That's significant," she said. "It dropped." "So it's below us," I said. "Or lateral," she replied. "Which means—" The stairwell door below us creaked open. Footsteps slow, heavy. The device vibrated sharply again. My stomach clenched. The voice behind me whispered, delighted now. "There." Dr. Keller stiffened. She stepped slightly in front of me, not protective, exactly, but positioning. A man appeared on the 5th-floor landing. Mid-50s, maintenance uniform. Keys clipped to his belt. The super. He looked up at us, surprised. "Everything okay?" he called. The device screamed. A continuous vibration that made my teeth buzz. Dr. Keller didn't hesitate. "We're fine," she said evenly. "Just stepping out for air." The man frowned. "Stairwell, not for loitering." "I'm aware," she said, polite, firm. Behind me, the voice hissed. "He did it." My mouth went dry. My private flaw, avoidance, screamed at me to stay quiet. Let authority handle it. But my heart was racing too hard for silence. "You were in my apartment," I blurted. "Last month." The man's eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me." "You came in when I wasn't home," I said. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. After that, things started happening. Dr. Keller shot me a look, too much, too fast, but didn't interrupt. The super's expression hardened. "Lady, I fix leaks. I don't mess with tenants." The device vibrated violently, then abruptly went dead. Silence, real silence this time. No ringing, no pressure. My knees nearly buckled. Dr. Keller stared at the blank screen. "Battery's full," she muttered. "It didn't die." The super glanced between us. "You two need to leave," he said. "Now." Something about his tone, defensive, not confused, sent a chill through me. Dr. Keller nodded once. "We will," she said. "Thank you." She grabbed my arm and steered me up the remaining steps to the 6th-floor hallway before I could argue. We burst through the door. Carpet, neutral art. A faint smell of someone's cooking drifting under a door. Normality hit me like a wave, dizzying. I sagged against the wall. "That was a mistake," Dr. Keller said under her breath. Confronting him without evidence. "You saw the device," I said. "You saw what happened when he showed up." "I did," she said, "but correlation isn't proof." The device buzzed back to life in her hand. "Weak, inconsistent." "Second attempt," she said. "We check your phone." "What?" "Devices can piggyback," she said. "Bluetooth, ultrasonic beacons. Apps with permissions people forget about." My chest tightened. "You think it's on me?" "I think it might be interacting with something you carry," she said. That doesn't mean it's your fault. We ducked into a small alcove near the elevators. The floor indicator dinged softly. Somewhere, a baby cried. Dr. Keller guided me through my settings. Bluetooth off, Wi-Fi off, location services off. I deleted 2 apps I barely remembered installing. The device readings dipped, not gone, but quieter. Hope sparked and then died. The elevator doors slid open. The device spiked again, screaming louder than it had in the stairwell. I clutched my head. Pain stabbed behind my eyes. "It hurts," I gasped. Dr. Keller slammed the elevator button, forcing the doors to close. The spike eased. "Elevator motors," she said, breathing hard. "Electromagnetic interference. Explainable." I laughed hysterically. Everything's explainable until it's not. She met my eyes. "We're running out of safe tests," she said, "which means the next step is formal." "Police," I said. "Yes," she replied, "but not here." The device vibrated again, stronger now despite everything we'd shut off. Dr. Keller's face went pale. "It's compensating," she said, "whatever it is." Behind me, the voice whispered, triumphant. Too late. A fire alarm blared suddenly, deafening. Red lights strobed. I screamed, hands over my ears. The pain was immediate and brutal. Dr. Keller cursed. "False alarm," she shouted over the noise. "Construction dust triggers them all the time." Misdirection, again, but my body didn't know that. People poured into the hallway, confused, annoyed. Doors opening. Voices overlapping. The device in Dr. Keller's hand vibrated like it might shatter. "We can't control the environment anymore," she yelled. "Too many variables." The alarm cut off as abruptly as it started. Silence rushed back in, broken by murmurs. Dr. Keller grabbed her phone. "I'm calling the police," she said. "Now." "No," I said, sudden and certain. She stared at me. "If it's tied to my apartment," I said, breath ragged. "If it followed me here, then the source might still be active there. Or waiting." My avoidance finally snapped into something else. Resolve edged with fear. Dr. Keller hesitated. "Maya." "If we wait," I said, "it disappears, or moves, or gets worse." The device vibrated steadily now. A low, ominous thrum. Dr. Keller exhaled slowly. "Point of no return," she said. She nodded once. "We go to your place, together, and we don't leave until we know." Behind me, the voice went silent. That scared me more than anything so far. We took the stairs down, because I couldn't stand the elevator after the way the device had screamed at the doors. Outside, York Avenue was doing what it always did: horns, brakes, someone arguing into a headset, the smell of halal carts and exhaust. Dr. Keller kept close, one hand at my elbow like I might drift into traffic. The little black recorder sat in her palm. It wasn't vibrating now. It wasn't chirping. That silence tracked us all the way to my building on East 87th, the one with the narrow lobby and the mailboxes that never fully shut. I hated it more than the noise. It felt like something had gone still on purpose. "You're sure you want to do this?" Dr. Keller asked as we pushed through the front door. Her voice was steady. but her eyes kept darting hallway, stairwell. The little security camera above the buzzer that had a film of dust on its lens. "If I don't," I said, "I'm going to spend the rest of my life walking around with my shoulders up around my ears." My wrist throbbed from the stairwell stumble earlier. I flexed it and winced. We climbed to the 4th floor. The building smelled like old radiator heat and someone's laundry. Every landing looked the same. Beige walls, a dying plant in a pot, a faint smear where people's hands had brushed the paint. When we reached my door, my key was already in my hand. I stopped. The deadbolt was turned, unlocked. I stared at it like it might turn itself back. Dr. Keller saw it and went still too. "Did you lock it this morning?" "Yes," I said instantly, because I always locked it. Twice. My private flaw in action. Control where I could, avoid what I couldn't. The recorder in her hand gave a tiny chirp. Just one. Then a low vibration started, so soft I could feel it more than hear it. Behind me, the voice returned, intimate as breath. "Don't go in." My skin prickled so hard it hurt. Dr. Keller's eyes held mine. "We don't enter without a plan," she said. "We step back. We call 911. My mouth opened. Avoidance wanted to agree. Relief wanted to hand the fear to someone with a badge. But the vibration strengthened, as if whatever was inside had sensed we were here. I heard it then, a faint scraping, not quite a footstep, from the other side of my door. Someone was in my apartment. Dr. Keller had her phone out already. She didn't dial, yet she listened. Her jaw tightened. "Okay," she said quietly. "We do this safely. You stand behind me. If the door swings open, you move back down the hall. No heroics." I wanted to say I wasn't a hero. I wanted to say I didn't even want to be here. Instead, I nodded. Dr. Keller raised her voice, sharp enough to carry. "Hello, this is Dr. Hannah Keller. We're at apartment 4B if you're inside. Identify yourself." Silence, then a soft click, like a latch. Dr. Keller's phone hovered over the screen. "On 3, she said to me. We opened the door and stepped back. The recorder vibrated harder. My teeth buzzed with it. "1, she said. The voice behind me whispered, pleased now, like it knew the script. 2. Dr. Keller twisted the knob and pulled. The door opened a few inches. A man's hand shot out from the gap and shoved it wider with sudden force. Dr. Keller stumbled back, shoulder slamming into the hallway wall. The super stepped into the doorway. Up close, he looked less like a guy who fixed leaks and more like someone who'd been running on adrenaline for hours. His pupils were wide. A sheen of sweat slicked his forehead. He held a small toolbox in one hand, and in the other, my stomach dropped a coil of thin black wire. "What the hell are you doing here?" he snapped. Dr. Keller didn't flinch. She was already dialing. "Step away from the door," she said, loud and clear, like she wanted any neighbor to hear. "You are trespassing." His gaze flicked to my face. The corner of his mouth twitched. "You," he said. "You had to go and bring someone." The recorder in Dr. Keller's hand gave a violent buzz. The air pressure in my ears spiked. The voice behind me surged so sharply, I almost gagged. She brought a witness. Dr. Keller held her phone up, screen lit. "I am calling the police," she said. "Now." His expression changed, tightened. He lunged. Everything happened too fast and too slow at once. He slapped the phone hard. It flew and skittered across the hallway carpet, screen flashing. Dr. Keller grabbed for it and missed. He shoved her with his shoulder. Her head hit the wall with a dull, sick sound that made my stomach roll. Dr. Keller slid down a few inches, grimacing, one hand going to her temple. Blood welled between her fingers. My body moved before my mind did. I grabbed the hallway railing, nothing, and then I was in the doorway, pushing at him with my good arm, trying to shove him back into my apartment, because the hallway felt too exposed, too public, too full of echo. Bad instinct, panic instinct. He swung his toolbox like a battering ram, not at my head, but at my torso. It clipped my forearm. Pain flared white hot. I gasped and stumbled. The voice behind me cut in, cold and instructive. Behind. It wasn't a warning about ghosts. It was directional. He was reaching behind the doorframe, towards something mounted low, inside the wall. I saw it in the same instant. The recorder's buzz pitched higher. A small, flat speaker plate tucked behind the loose baseboard by the entry, wired into the wall cavity. A cheap parametric transducer, something that could throw sound in a narrow beam, so it felt like it was coming from a specific point. Behind me. All this time, it hadn't been in my head. It had been in my walls. "Stop," I shouted, and my voice cracked raw. He yanked at the wire, eyes wild. "You don't get to," he started. And then Dr. Keller, still half on the floor, did something I didn't expect. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her keys, heavy, with a thick metal fob, and whipped them at his face. They hit his cheekbone with a wet smack. He swore and flinched, hand flying up. It was a tiny opening, a human opening. Dr. Keller, teeth clenched, reached for her phone on the carpet and hit the emergency call button again with shaking fingers. She shoved it toward me. "Speaker," she rasped. "Now." I hit it. The operator's voice filled the hall, tinny but real. 911. "What's your emergency?" "This is Dr. Hannah Keller," Dr. Keller said, voice tight with pain. "We have an intruder in apartment 4B, male, building maintenance, attempting to remove equipment. He assaulted us. We need police and EMS." The super's eyes flicked to the phone. Calculation battled panic on his face. He made a choice. He lunged past me, not to attack, but to bolt down the hallway. I threw my body into the doorway to block him without thinking. He slammed into me. My shoulder hit the frame. My wrist screamed. I yelped and went down to one knee, but I stayed in the way just long enough for Dr. Keller to grab his belt with one hand and the looped wire with the other. There was a sharp snap, either the wire tearing free or something inside my wall giving way. The recorder gave one last shriek and then went dead in Dr. Keller's palm, as if someone had flipped the power off at the source. The pressure in my ears vanished so abruptly it made me dizzy. The voice behind me stopped mid-thought. The super tore free and ran. Down the stairs, his boots thumped hard, fatting. For a moment, the world was only breathing mine, Dr. Keller. The operator still talking on speaker, asking questions I couldn't answer because my throat had closed. Dr. Keller pressed her bloody hand against her head and looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. Not triumph, not relief, but something like mourning. Inside, she said hoarsely, we secure the device. Don't touch anything else. We went in slow. My apartment smelled like stale coffee, and the lemon cleaner I used when I was pretending my life was orderly. The kitchen light was left on by someone else. The living room curtains were half drawn. The loose baseboard by the entry hung crooked. Behind it, the flat speaker plate was still there, half wrenched, its adhesive torn, wires exposed like nerves. Dr. Keller pointed with her uninjured hand. Take a photo, she said, from where it sits. Don't pull it. My hands shook as I aimed the phone. The camera focused, then blurred, then focused again. In the frame, the device looked small, ordinary like nothing. On the floor near the toolbox marks, I noticed something else. A cheap carbon monoxide detector, face down, battery cover missing. My stomach turned. The operator's voice cut through again. Ma'am, are you still there? Dr. Keller swallowed hard. Yes, she said, we're here. Outside, somewhere below, I heard the building's front door open and close. Footsteps, voices, the distant crackle of a radio. Police. The immediate danger had passed, but the cost sat heavy in the room. My swollen wrist, Dr. Keller's bleeding temple, my apartment no longer feeling like mine. And as I stood there, staring at the torn baseboard and the little plate that had been whispering into my life, a new fear crept in, not supernatural, not irrational, practical. If he'd put one device in my wall, how many others did I never find because I'd trained myself not to look? The EMTs kept asking me to rate my pain on a scale of 1 to 10, and I kept answering like I was at work. Maybe a 6, I said, even as my wrist throbbed with its own heartbeat, and my forearm was swelling under the cheap ice pack they'd wrapped in gauze. The truth was I didn't trust my numbers anymore. Not after months of telling myself everything was fine, because the alternative was admitting it was. Dr. Keller sat on my couch with a white bandage taped over her temple, her hair pushed back in a way that made her look less like a therapist and more like someone's exhausted aunt. Her eyes had that overbright shine people get after adrenaline, when the body refuses to accept it's done. An officer stood by my entryway, speaking into a radio, while another took photos of the loose baseboard and the little flat speaker plate nestled behind it like a secret. They didn't touch it right away. That was the first thing that made me believe someone was taking this seriously. Ma'am, the younger officer said to me, clipboard in hand, voice practiced, but not cold. Can you walk me through when you first noticed the voices? I opened my mouth and my throat tightened. I hadn't expected that question to feel like stepping onto a weak stair. It wasn't just the when. It was the fact that I'd heard it over and over and still gone to work, still smiled at people, still told myself it was stress, still slept with the kitchen light on and called it a preference. Dr. Keller spoke before I could. October, she said, worsening over time. Directional perception consistently described as behind her. We have reason to believe the device was active during that period. The officer nodded, scribbled, and then looked at Dr. Keller. And you're Hannah Keller, she said. I'm her therapist. The officer's eyebrows lifted slightly, as if he'd been expecting a roommate or partner, not someone who billed by the hour. But he didn't comment. Across the room, the older officer, grayer, slower, was crouched by the baseboard with a flashlight, careful not to disturb the wires. He let out a soft whistle. That's not a baby monitor, he muttered. That's, yeah. Directional speaker, Dr. Keller said, voice rough. Parametric. He glanced back at her. You know your stuff. She didn't smile. Not well enough. The super was gone, obviously. They'd tried his unit first. The officers came back with the same expression you see on commuters when the train they need doesn't arrive. Annoyance edged with resignation. Apartment empty, the younger officer said. Neighbors say he usually goes home around 5. He didn't sign out. We've got his full name and photo from management. Patrol's looking. It should have felt like victory. It didn't. It felt like a door left open in a storm. A third person arrived in a navy jacket with a small hard case. FDNY, maybe, or building safety. He flipped my carbon monoxide detector over, shook his head, and popped the battery compartment open. It was disabled, he said. Simple, flat, like he was reading a menu item. I sat very still on my own armchair, ice pack melting into my sleeve, and thought about the months I'd spent blaming myself for being anxious when someone had been, very literally, messing with my air and my sense of space. You should get checked, the EMT said again, softer now. Just in case. Carbon monoxide exposure can do weird things. I'm fine, I started automatically. Dr. Keller's gaze snapped to me, not angry, just firm. Maya, she said quietly. Hospital. The word landed with weight. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a boundary, a corrective to my lifelong habit of minimizing. I nodded once, because fighting her would mean admitting how scared I actually was. The ambulance ride was short and boring in the way emergency rides often are when you're not actively dying. Fluorescent lights, the smell of vinyl and antiseptic, the EMT's radio murmuring codes I didn't understand. My wrist got splinted, my forearm wrapped tighter, and a pulse oximeter clipped to my finger that made me feel like a machine being monitored. At the ER, the triage nurse asked the same questions in a different tone. Name, age, allergies. How did you injure your wrist? I hesitated. The truth sounded unreal in my mouth. Assault, Dr. Keller said from beside me. Her bandage had seeped a little red at the edge. That got us moved faster. They did a blood test for carboxyhemoglobin. They did an X-ray. No fracture, just a sprain and bruising. The doctor told me to rest it, to keep it elevated, to follow up if numbness developed. Ordinary instructions for an extraordinary day. When we finally left, the sky had gone dark, and the city had shifted into its late-night mode, less bustling, more tense. The kind of night where footsteps behind you register, even when you're not paranoid. Dr. Keller walked me back to my building anyway. The lobby looked almost the same, except for two things: a uniformed officer sitting by the mailboxes, and a fresh smear of tape across the management office door that said, "Do not enter," in block letters. My keys felt unfamiliar in my hand, like they belonged to a previous version of me. "We can get you a hotel," Dr. Keller said as we stood by the elevator. Her voice was tired now. "Or you can stay with a friend. You shouldn't be alone tonight." "I don't have someone," I said before I could stop myself. The admission was small and sharp. I'd built my life in a way that made being alone feel like competence. Now it felt like vulnerability. Dr. Keller's eyes softened. "Then I'll stay," she said. "You can't," I said, half laughing. "That's tonight," she interrupted gently. "Not as your therapist, as a person who was in that hallway with you." It wasn't a perfect solution. Nothing was. But the thought of going upstairs and hearing the pipes creak and wondering if it was just pipes again made my stomach clench. So we went up together. My apartment door had been taped off by evidence tech, but they'd let us in after we signed something and promised not to touch anything. The baseboard area was now marked with a small tent card number like a crime show, except it looked cheap and sad in my entryway. The living room light was still on. I turned it off myself this time. I wanted darkness to be my choice again. Dr. Keller sat at my kitchen table with a paper cup of water, her hands wrapped around it. I sat across from her, wrist splinted, forearm aching, and listened. Not for voices, for normal things. The radiator ticked. A neighbor's TV murmured faintly through the wall. The refrigerator clicked on. For the first time in months, the sound behind me was just sound. "You did something brave today," Dr. Keller said quietly. I stared at the tabletop, at the tiny scratches in the wood I'd never noticed until now. "I did something stupid," I said. "I confronted him in the stairwell. I blocked him. You survived," she said, "and you got evidence. That matters." I swallowed, my throat burned. "How do I know it's over?" I asked. Dr. Keller didn't answer right away. She looked toward my entryway, where the tent card sat, where the baseboard had been peeled back. "You don't," she said finally. "Not tonight, not completely. But we can make it harder for anyone to do this again. New locks, cameras, a proper code detector." And she paused. "We can work on the part of you that decided your fear was proof you were broken." I let out a breath that sounded like a laugh, but wasn't. "I thought I was losing my mind," I said. "I know," she replied. "And that's why this is going to leave a mark." Later, when Dr. Keller dozed on my couch with her coat still on and her shoes by the door, I lay in my bed with my splinted wrist on a pillow and stared at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet in the way I'd always told myself I liked. I turned my head toward the wall. No voice, just the faint, almost imperceptible hum of the building's ventilation. I told myself that hum had always been there, and then I caught myself checking whether it sounded like it was coming from behind me. That's tonight's story. If it gives you chills, make sure to like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and tap the bell so you never miss what's coming next. And if you're still brave enough, there are more dark tales waiting for you right here on the channel. Go watch another if you dare. You're listening to Mia Horror Stories, and today's story is Never Explore an Abandoned Hospital Alone. The screen will stay completely black, letting your imagination do all the work. No visuals, no noise, just a story that creeps under your skin. Don't skip a second, because every detail builds to the chilling end you won't want to miss. Hallway smelled faintly of mildew and something sour, like old sweat trapped behind peeling wallpaper. The fluorescent lights above flickered erratically, buzzing low, and one bulb died with a soft pop, plunging the far end of the corridor into uneven shadows. There was no wind, yet a cold draft skittered along the cracked linoleum floor, tugging at the edges of a torn patient chart stuck to the wall. Somewhere, distant but steady, a rusty radiator clanked as if trying to cough up a last breath. "Did you hear that?" Emma whispered, squinting into the gloom. She took a cautious step forward, fingers brushing the rough concrete wall for balance. The others froze, exchanging uneasy looks. "Probably just the pipes," Jake said, his voice flat, but quick to break the silence. He pulled his phone out, its flashlight casting a narrow beam onto the floor ahead. The screen's faint glow illuminated the peeling green paint and scattered debris, old syringes, a cracked plastic cup, a shredded curtain tangled in a rusted wheelchair wheel. Jake was the first to move again, breaking the silence with a half-hearted joke. "You guys realize this is exactly where some horror movie would start, right?" Emma didn't laugh. She kept her eyes on the darkened hallway, her jaw tight. The hospital had been closed for nearly 10 years, boarded up and forgotten by the city. But it still sat there, massive and brooding, like a monument to quiet despair. "Why did you want to come here?" she thought, catching the edge of a familiar flutter in her chest. Emma Turner, 28, female, a graphic designer by day and an amateur urban explorer by weekend. She had a habit of pushing limits, but underneath her easy confidence was a lingering fear of being stuck, of never making a mark or living a life worth telling stories about. Tonight's excursion was partly about the thrill, but mostly about shaking off the creeping stagnation of her routine. Jake Collins, 30, male, an IT technician with a dry sense of humor and a restless streak. He was Emma's boyfriend and the one who found this place online, convinced it would be the perfect adventure. His calm exterior masked an anxiety about failure, not just in his job, but socially. He liked to keep things light because deep down, he worried about being overlooked. Across from them stood Claire Morgan, 27, female, Emma's childhood friend, and a nurse at a local hospital. Claire had joined reluctantly, citing curiosity, but mostly to keep Emma safe. Claire was grounded, practical, with a tendency to overthink risks. She carried a small backpack with a first aid kit and a bottle of water, habits from work bleeding into her personal life. They reached the end of the hallway, where a heavy metal door leaned open, creaking softly on rusted hinges. Beyond was the main lobby, vast and cavernous under the cracked skylight that filtered the moonlight in a sickly, pale wash. The floor was littered with old magazines, fragments of glass, and a few stray syringes. A reception desk lay toppled, drawers spilling paperwork that fluttered slightly in the draft. The atmosphere had shifted. The hum of the city outside seemed miles away, muffled like a distant memory. Inside, every sound was sharp feet crunching on debris, the scrape of a metal chair dragged across the floor, the faint drip of water somewhere in the bowels of the building. Claire flicked on her phone's flashlight, scanning the lobby with quick, practiced movements. We shouldn't stay long. These places can be dangerous structurally and otherwise. Yeah, I know, Emma said, but her voice lacked conviction. She was already scanning the space for something more than just the obvious decay. Her eyes caught on a rusted elevator shaft cage, its doors half open and black inside. Jake crouched to pick something up, a small, battered key with no obvious purpose. Look at this. Wonder what it opened. Claire frowned. Probably best to leave it alone. We don't know what kind of trouble we could stir up. The sound came then, a faint tapping, rhythmic and irregular, echoing down the corridor to their left. The three froze again. What was that? Jake asked, voice low. Emma swallowed. Probably a rat or something. But her heart was beating a little faster now. They stood there, caught between curiosity and caution, as the tapping came again, slower this time, almost deliberate. Maybe we should head back, Claire said, stepping toward the exit. Jake shook his head. We just got here. Let's at least see the old nurse's station upstairs. It's supposed to be the most intact part. Emma's fingers tightened around the torn patient chart on the wall. Her gaze flicked back to the elevator shaft. The building was full of stories that maybe didn't want to be uncovered. The choice hung in the cold air, thick and electric. Stay and explore deeper into the hospital's dark heart, or leave before something unseen starts to settle in. The tapping stopped the moment Claire suggested turning back. But then, from somewhere deeper in the building, a sharp metallic clang echoed, like a heavy door slamming shut. The sound reverberated off the cracked walls, leaving a thick silence that felt too deliberate to be the building settling. Emma glanced at Jake, who was already heading toward the staircase that led up from the lobby. You're serious about the nurse's station? Jake's jaw tightened. Yeah, we've got a limited window before my phone battery dies. I want to get a few good shots. Come on. Claire sighed, pulling her jacket tighter. Fine, but if anything feels off, we leave. No heroics. The stairwell was cramped and dark, the steps groaning under their weight. Emma's flashlight beam bounced off graffiti-scarred walls, flickering on tangled wiring and shattered remnants of old ceiling tiles. A sudden draft whispered past them, carrying a faint smell of burnt plastic that set Claire's nerves jangling. Halfway up, Emma paused. Hey, where's Jake? Claire's head snapped toward the top of the stairs. Jake was standing at the landing, holding his phone out, flashlight casting a pool of light onto the floor. "What's up?" Emma asked, catching up. Jake pointed. "Look at this." On the cracked linoleum was a deep gouge, scraping across the floor and ending near a loose floor tile that jutted up like a broken tooth. Emma crouched down, peering at the tile. "That looks fresh." Claire's brow furrowed. "Someone been here, or it's recent damage." Jake tapped his phone to take a photo, then shined the light into the small gap under the tile. "It's empty, but I swear I saw something move." Emma's stomach tightened. The building had felt empty just moments ago, but now that certainty was gone. "Maybe a rat," Claire said quickly, voice sharp with unease. "We shouldn't be poking around." Jake shook his head. "Come on, that's just the hospital's usual decay. Let's keep moving." Emma glanced toward the stairwell's exit door at the top of the landing. Something tugged at her, the sense of being watched. The stale air, suddenly too thick. They pressed on into the upper floor's narrow corridors. The nurse's station came into view, a cluttered desk with drawers still intact, yellowed papers strewn about, a rusted metal lamp hanging by a frayed cord. Claire immediately began scanning the area. "We should mark our path. This place is a maze." Jake pulled a length of red tape from his backpack, tearing off a strip and sticking it to the wall. "Good call." Emma's fingers brushed over a dusty telephone handset. She lifted it, expecting silence, but the line crackled faintly, dead, but strangely unsettling. Suddenly, a low rumble shuddered through the building. The lights overhead flickered wildly, and somewhere nearby, glass shattered. "Shit," Claire's voice was tight. "That doesn't sound good." Jake's phone buzzed, low battery warning. Emma looked toward the stairwell door. They'd heard it slam shut behind them. She tried it. Locked. "Locked," Jake said, testing the handle. "Why the hell would it lock?" Claire's face went pale. "It's an automatic security system, probably triggered when the power flickered." Emma swallowed hard. "We're trapped." A wave of panic rose in her chest, but she swallowed it back. Jake was already tapping on his phone, trying to get a signal. "No bars. The whole place is dead." Claire took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Okay, we stay calm. We find another way out." "Yeah, but the stairwell door's locked," Jake said, frustration creeping in. "That means the elevator shaft." Emma's gaze snapped to the rusted elevator doors they'd passed earlier. "Elevator," Claire shook her head. "That thing hasn't worked in years. It's not safe." "Better than being stuck here," Jake said. He started toward the elevator doors. Emma hesitated. Her mind flicked back to the key Jake had found in the lobby. "Wait, maybe that key opens the elevator doors," she said. "It's worth a try." Jake nodded and pulled the key out, fitting it into the lock with a satisfying click. The doors groaned open, revealing a yawning black shaft, a rope ladder dangling from the top. Claire stepped back. "No way I'm going down that." Jake peered into the darkness. "We don't have a choice." Emma's stomach churned. The narrow, twisting ladder descending into a void felt like a test she wasn't sure she could pass. "We'll take turns," Jake said, pulling his jacket off and tying a strip of cloth around his wrist, then looping it around the ladder's top rung. Emma swallowed again, Her usual confidence cracked. What if I fall? What if I'm not fast enough? The fear of failure clawed at her. Claire's voice cut in sharply. Look, I don't like this. We should wait for help. Jake shook his head. No signal. No one knows we're here. The power flicker probably knocked out all communication. Emma felt the tension rise between them. Jake's stubbornness, Claire's caution, and her own creeping doubt. Suddenly, the building groaned louder. A shifting sound like it was settling, or worse, collapsing. Time running out, Jake said urgently. Emma glanced back toward the locked stairwell door and the shadowed hallways beyond. Every instinct screamed to get out. But the ladder looked like a long, slow drop into danger. She took a deep breath. Okay, we try the elevator shaft. Claire's eyes widened. You go first. Jake shook his head. No, Emma's right. We should all stick together. The tension stretched tight, too tight. From somewhere above, a muffled sound echoed footsteps, distant but deliberate. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. Someone else is here, Claire whispered. Jake shone his flashlight upward. The beam caught nothing but dust motes dancing in the stale air. Emma's voice cracked. We're not alone. The decision hung between them. Climb down the ladder into the unknown below, or risk facing whoever else might be inside the hospital, and whatever else was waiting. The rope ladder swayed slightly in the stale air of the elevator shaft, creaking like an old ship's rigging. Emma gripped the ropes with trembling hands, the rough fibers biting into her palms. Below, the darkness stretched endlessly, but somewhere down there was their only chance. Jake went first, his boots thudding quietly against the metal framework. Claire's voice came up weakly behind Emma. Be careful. Don't rush. Emma swallowed a rising tide of vertigo and stepped off the landing. The ladder swung beneath her weight, and the cold air bit through her jacket. Every rung felt like a test, every breath shallow and uneven. Halfway down, the movement threw her off balance, and her foot slipped, scraping raw against the ladder. Emma, Jake's voice, echoing faintly below, made her pulse spike. I'm fine, she said, though the scrape stung sharply. Claire was still above, her flashlight swinging nervously against the elevator shaft walls. Finally, all three reached the bottom, a small, dimly lit basement service room smelling of mold and rust. Flickering emergency lights cast sharp angles and long shadows, and a tangle of pipes snaked along the ceiling. The sound of dripping water echoed quietly in the corners. They huddled together, a brief reprieve from the oppressive vertical drop. Jake pulled his phone out again, but it was dead. No signal, he said flatly. We're completely cut off. Emma scanned the room. A heavy metal door, half open, led into a corridor lined with faded paint and stained floor tiles. This basement level was quieter, less cluttered, but felt deeper underground, colder. They started down the corridor, the beam of their flashlights cutting through the dark like knives. The tapping sound from before was gone, replaced by distant echoes of dripping water and the low hum of what might have been ventilation. Suddenly, a scraping noise came from around a corner, a slow, deliberate sound of metal sliding on concrete. Claire stiffened, What the hell was that? Jake took a cautious step forward, flashlight trained on the corner. Probably rats or a loose pipe. Emma's heart was pounding too hard to be convinced. She crept forward, her breath visible in the cold air. Around the corner, a rusted gurney lay tipped on its side, and beyond it, an old storage closet with its door hanging open. Then a sudden noise, a loud bang followed by a rush of footsteps echoing off the walls. "Someone's here," Claire hissed. "We're not alone." Jake raised his flashlight toward the sound, but it vanished as quickly as it came. The corridor was empty. They exchanged tense looks. Emma's stomach twisted. We need to find another way out fast. Their second attempt was to reach the hospital's original emergency exit. A heavy steel door, marked with faded red paint, at the far end of the basement. The corridor stretched out before them, narrow and winding, the floor littered with broken tiles and puddles of stagnant water. The air smelled sharper here, with an undertone of decay and rust. Claire led, flashlight bouncing nervously across the walls. Jake stayed close behind, carrying the now useless phone. Emma brought up the rear, keeping her eyes peeled for anything unusual. Halfway down, Claire stumbled on a piece of debris, a rusted pipe bent sharply out of the floor. She caught herself on the wall, wincing. "Are you okay?" Emma asked, stepping back to help. Claire nodded, but rubbed her ankle where a bruise was already forming. "I'll manage." The mood was brittle, each step heavy with fatigue and fear. They finally reached the emergency door, its handle cold and unyielding. Jake tugged at it, but it wouldn't budge. "Locked," he said, frustration seeping into his voice. "Probably sealed when the hospital shut down." Emma's eyes flicked to the thick steel frame. "Maybe there's a way to pry it open." Jake shrugged. "Without tools, not likely." Suddenly, Claire's flashlight beam caught something, a set of muddy footprints leading away from the door and disappearing into a dark maintenance tunnel. "What's that?" Emma asked, stepping closer. "Someone been here," Claire said, voice low. Jake frowned, but who and why? Emma swallowed hard. The thought that they weren't alone was no longer speculation. Exhausted and with their nerves frayed, the three pressed onward, following the muddy footprints down the narrow, claustrophobic tunnel. The walls here were damp, the concrete cold and slick with condensation. The tunnel twisted sharply, then opened into a small room filled with old medical supplies, rusted beds, broken monitors, shattered glass. A sudden clang made all three jump. The noise came from behind a metal cart that had apparently been nudged by some unseen force. Emma exhaled sharply. "It's just the cart." Jake laughed nervously. "Yeah, hospital ghosts remember." Claire shot him a look, but forced a smile. "Let's keep moving." Their third attempt was to retrace their steps back toward the stairwell. Hopping the lock had released with the restored power, though none of them believed it would be that simple. The corridors now seemed more hostile. Dim lights flickered and died. The sound of dripping water grew louder, and the stale air thickened with dust and something else, faint but unmistakable. The acrid smell of smoke. "Smoke," Emma whispered, nose wrinkling. Claire stopped, pulling her jacket tighter. That can't be good. They followed the smell, which grew stronger as they turned a corner into the hospital's old laundry room. A small fire smoldered in a pile of discarded linens, sending up thin tendrils of smoke. Jake moved to stamp it out with a nearby fire extinguisher, but found it empty. Claire pulled her phone out, but it was dead. No signal. Great, Jake muttered. Emma's pulse quickened. How did this start? The fire seemed isolated, but it was a clear sign that the hospital's fragile decay was accelerating. Their escape routes could be compromised at any moment. Suddenly, a sharp noise echoed behind them. Footsteps again, closer this time. They whipped around, flashlights swinging wildly. But it wasn't a person. A large rat scurried across the floor and disappeared through a cracked wall vent. They all laughed nervously, relief flooding through the tension. But the moment was fleeting. They finally reached the stairwell. Hopping the lock had reset with the flickering power. Jake tried the door handle. Locked. Emma's heart sank. There's no way out up there, Claire said flatly. Jake pulled out the key again. Maybe it works on this door too. He tried the key click. The door swung open, but beyond the stairwell lay a steep drop. The stairs had partially collapsed. Emma's breath caught. The last flight was gone. Broken concrete crumbled into darkness below. Claire's eyes widened. No way down. We can't go back, Jake said, voice tight. And we can't go up. Emma looked over the jagged gap, nausea rising. Their options had shrunk to nearly nothing. The hospital was closing in. They were trapped. The smoke thickened fast, turning cold air into something heavy and wet. It curled around their faces, stinging their eyes and clogging their throats. Emma's chest ached with each ragged breath as they pressed forward, desperate for any sign of an exit. We have to keep moving, Jake gasped, voice rough. The fire's spreading. Claire stumbled, her ankle swollen and bruised from earlier. She caught herself on a rusted pipe, grimacing. I'm not sure how much longer I can. Keep going, Emma cut in, voice sharp despite the panic. We don't have a choice. They pushed deeper into the basement corridor, flashlights flickering and useless against the rising haze. Emma's fingers curled tight around the battered key, still their only real hope. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from behind them. The metal door they'd come through slammed shut with a violent clang. Locked again, Jake cursed, pounding on the door. We're trapped. Emma spun toward the noise. Footsteps closer now, deliberate, heavy. Not human, but something big. Her heart hammered as the shadows shifted. A figure emerged, tall, gaunt, an old man with wild gray hair and stained clothes. His eyes were sunken, darting frantically. Get away, he hissed, voice trembling. You don't belong here. Claire stepped forward. We just want to get out. Can you help us? He shook his head violently. No one leaves once the hospital takes you. Emma's skin crawled. This wasn't a ghost story, but the desperation in his eyes was real, maybe madness, or something worse. She remembered the footprints, the noises. He was the source. Please, Jake said softly. We don't want trouble, just a way out. The man's gaze flickered to the fire smoke curling near the ceiling. The east exit, through the old boiler room, but it's dangerous. Emma glanced toward where the firelight flickered faintly through the smoke. The boiler room was a maze of pipes and rusted machinery, unstable and treacherous. "Lead us," Emma said, heart pounding. He nodded once and moved ahead, limping but steady. The boiler room was a labyrinth. Pipes hung low, some leaking hot steam. The floor was slick with oily residue, and every step echoed through the cavernous space. The heat pressed down, sweat mixing with smoke on their skin. Claire winced, limping heavily. Jake helped her, but the strain showed in his clenched jaw. Suddenly, a section of rusted railing gave way under Claire's foot. She yelped, twisting her ankle further and falling hard against a metal beam. Emma rushed to her side. "Can you stand?" Claire shook her head, eyes wide with pain. "We can't leave her," Jake said urgently. Emma glanced around, breath fogging in the thick air. The far wall had a narrow door, barely hanging on its hinges. "We don't have time," she said, forcing herself to stay calm. "Help me carry her." They lifted Claire carefully, moving slower now. Every step was a gamble, pipes hissed, and the floor trembled faintly beneath their feet. Suddenly, a distant roar shook the room. The fire was spreading fast. Emma's heart slammed. They were close now. The old man stopped at the door, gripping it with a shaking hand. "It's locked," he muttered, pulling a rusted keyring from his pocket. Emma's eyes widened. "You have a key." He looked up, eyes haunted. "I lived here once, locked in with the others." With trembling fingers, he unlocked the door, pushing it open into a narrow concrete stairwell leading upward. The smoke was thicker here, choking. Emma coughed, tearing at her sleeve to cover her mouth. They started climbing, step by step. Halfway up, a pipe burst overhead, spraying scalding steam. Jake shouted, pulling Emma and Claire aside. Emma's arm brushed the railing, which groaned ominously. The stairs trembled, then cracked. Claire screamed as the railing gave way beneath her hand. Emma lunged, grabbing Claire's wrist just before she fell into the smoke-filled abyss below. Jake caught Claire's other arm, hauling her back with every ounce of strength. For a moment, they hung there, breathless, bodies trembling. Emma's mind screamed. This was the moment. One misstep and... "Keep moving," she forced herself to say, voice steady but raw. They climbed the remaining steps, bursting through a rusted door into the cold night air. The city was distant but alive. The faint glow of streetlights and the hum of traffic carried on the breeze. Emma collapsed on the concrete outside, coughing, the taste of smoke thick in her mouth. Claire sat beside her, pale but conscious, ankle badly swollen. Jake pulled out his phone. It flickered weakly, showing a single bar. "Help's coming," he whispered. The old man leaned against the wall, silent now, watching. Hours later, wrapped in blankets and sipping water, Emma sat staring at the dark hospital silhouette behind them. Her hands trembled, the scrape on her palm raw and aching. They had survived, but at a cost. Claire's ankle would take weeks to heal. Jake's stubbornness had nearly cost them everything. And Emma, she realized her own fear of failure had almost trapped them all. The man who had led them out was gone by morning, vanished like a ghost. Emma wondered if he had ever truly belonged here, or if the hospital had claimed him long ago. The night had changed everything. They had escaped the building, but its weight settled deep inside them. The hospital was a burnt-out shell by morning, a blackened skeleton against the pale dawn. Fire trucks had finally arrived, too late to save the building, but just in time to pull Emma, Jake, and Claire from the chaos of that night. Emma sat stiffly on the back seat of an ambulance, her scraped palm wrapped loosely in a hospital bandage. The sterile white of the emergency room was a harsh contrast to the smoke-stained shadows she'd left behind. Claire was beside her, a thick ankle brace already fastened, her face pale but steady beneath the fluorescent glare. Jake hovered nearby, quietly fielding questions from paramedics, his usual sarcasm muted. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a dull ache and a tight knot in Emma's chest. "You're lucky," the paramedic told Claire as he checked her ankle. "A few more steps, and that could have been a fracture." Claire nodded, but didn't say much. Emma looked out the window at the police tape cordoning off the hospital grounds. Officers had begun interviewing the neighbors, trying to piece together how 3 people had gotten trapped inside a condemned building. No one was supposed to enter. Jake had already been cautioned for trespassing, but no charges had been pressed yet. The hospital was a hot spot for urban explorers and vandals, and the police expected the story to get tangled in legal bureaucracy before it faded away. Later, in the quiet of Emma's small apartment, the 3 of them gathered around a battered coffee table strewn with takeout boxes and empty water bottles. Emma's hand still throbbed from the scrape, and Claire's swollen ankle was propped up on a pillow. Jake flipped through photos he'd taken on his phone, blurry shots of broken hallways, peeling paint, and the faint outline of the old man who'd led them out. "No one believed us about him," Jake muttered, scrolling past the images. Emma's fingers hovered over the screen. He looked haunted, like he belonged to the hospital. Claire's eyes darkened. Maybe he did, or maybe it was just years of living alone down there. They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Emma felt the weight of everything, the fear, the exhaustion, the what-ifs. The hospital wasn't just a building. It was a trap that had nearly swallowed them whole. And now, the scars were real on their bodies and in their minds. Days passed, and the hospital became a distant headline, an urban legend retold with varying degrees of exaggeration. Emma returned to work, but found the usual hum of her life hollow. The fear that had clawed at her chest in those dark corridors now lurked beneath every ordinary moment. She caught herself staring at locked doors, shadows in the corners of rooms, and the sound of footsteps behind her when no one was there. Jake threw himself into fixing the phone's cracked screen, like mending the tangible could fix the intangible. Claire, ever practical, began researching the hospital's history and the story of a patient rumored to have lived in its bowels long after closure. The details were sparse, but it was enough to feed a gnawing unease. One evening, Emma found herself back at the edge of the hospital's fenced perimeter. The metal gate hung slightly ajar, the lock twisted and broken. Her breath caught. The night was still, but a faint tapping sound echoed, slow and rhythmic, down the empty street. Emma turned sharply. Nothing. Her heart slowed, but the feeling didn't leave, the sense that some stories never end, that some places never truly let go. She pulled her jacket tighter and walked away. The hospital's blackened frame looming silently behind her. The shadows fade for now, but the stories never end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and join our community of horror lovers. If you're hungry for more, check out the next video. Just remember, the scariest part is often the one you don't see coming.